Now then, you and I are going to rank the first 7 Overkill albums. I say we because I'm going to tell you my ranking, and then I would very much like you to get down in comments and tell me yours. It says a great deal about the quality of Overkill's first 7 albums that the number 7 album in this list is still a banger. I mean, I Hear Black is still a really good album. It's a very strange album though for Overkill. It came out in 1993 and it sees their Black Sabbath influences really dominate the band. And that's no bad thing, especially if you're really into like early Sabbath and you want to see the band explore that side of them. Now, I wasn't so sure at the time. At first, I was kind of horrified by what the band had done. Nevertheless, I reviewed this album for Kerrang! Magazine back then, and at the time I gave it 4Ks, and I don't regret that. I'd probably still give it 4Ks now. There are some really great tracks on here, like Dreaming in Colombian. The guitars on that are just like cement blocks. They're amazing. I Hear Black, the title track, is also a really good one. World of Hurt is great as well. Feed My Head, I don't know if I'm so into that. Shades of Grey, I'm really not that into it. It's a quality ballad, but to me, I have to be honest, I kind of have a blanket reaction to any thrash metal power ballad. I just find it really dull. So that's unfortunate. Spiritual Void is really Black Sabbathy. Ghost Dance, I must admit, I can't remember how that even goes. Way to the World is good, a bit more kind of standard Overkill. Ignorance and Innocence, not so much into that one. See, there's the odd track that I don't love so much, and that is what has put this album at the bottom of the list. Having said that, the album ends on a real high with Just Like You, which is, I think it's one of Overkill's better tracks. It's a really good attitude-driven, mid-paced song with great riffs, a really kind of great chunky and squealy riff. Always a pleasure. If you still haven't ordered this box set, by the way, and you're an Overkill fan, and obviously if you can afford it, then you might want to do so. You'll find handy buying links downstairs in the video description. Album number 6 is WFO. It's a fine album, once again, it really is, and it came out in 1994. It's the latest release on this first 7 albums list, and so while grunge and alt-rock were on the ascendant, Overkill delivered this pulverizing collection of very metal songs. The opening track on this album, Where It Hurts, is actually one of my very favourite Overkill songs. The verse riff is definitely one of their finest riffs. If I ever do an Overkill riffs ranking video, you can expect to see that riff pretty high up. But there's lots more to enjoy here as well. After I Hear Black, this was a real kind of return to Overkill's rollicking roots. It's not incredibly thrashy in terms of speed compared to some albums that followed, like The Killing Kind, which I really like, by the way, but it's very heavy, lots of crunch. There's some really good stuff here. I mean, Fast Junkie is, as the name suggests, pretty fast. The weight/new high and lows is a weirdly structured but really interesting and good song. What's Your Problem is a classic Overkill bit of attitude, isn't it? Under One is a really good epic kind of mid-paced. Supersonic Hate is one of the thrashiest songs on the album, probably the thrashiest. There's loads of good stuff on here, so that's what makes this kind of ranking video really difficult when you got really strong albums like this. So what's next on the list? Before I show you number 5, if you'd like to see me do future videos about Overkill in which I rank the songs on any of these individual albums, get down in comments and tell me which album you'd like to see, or albums indeed. Number 5 is Under the Influence. Yeah, might be slightly surprising to many of you, I'm not sure. And it's slightly surprising to me because when this album came out in 1988, I absolutely worshipped it and I thought it was by far the best thing Overkill had done. But looking back, it's a bit of an oddity. It's a bit strange, isn't it? The band kind of picked up a bit of an Anthrax mosh style. And while it's really interesting to hear them do that, I don't know, it still felt as if Overkill had kind of gone off in search of a new identity when they didn't really need one, because they'd already established that very well with Feel the Fire and Taking Over. Having said that, this is a great album. You know, I do love this album. I mean, it starts with Shred. It's hard to argue with Shred. And it's got Hello from the Gutter on it, which has never been one of my favourite Overkill songs, but I always kind of respect the fact that every band needs a more accessible kind of gateway song that's going to lure people into the band, and Hello from the Gutter was definitely one of those. Brain Fade, I like a lot. Drunken Wisdom was really good. I always loved End of the Line. I think it's one of Overkill's best songs from this whole period, really, End of the Line. It's got a really great Metallica-style riff. Head First is a slightly unpleasant song, I would say, but in terms of the lyrical subject matter, I'm not sure about that. But the album ends with Overkill 3, which is obviously a real pleasure. I love these songs in the Overkill series. So it's a funny old album. Yeah, an interesting one. It's a very distinct moment in Overkill's development. We are now at the midpoint of the list with this next album I'm about to show you, and it might surprise you because I am certain that for many of you, this will be your favourite Overkill album. Horrorscope. Yeah, I know, you might be kind of shocked, but this is my list and I want to hear yours. So get down in comments at the end of this video and show me what your list would be. Don't get me wrong, this is number 4, but I love this album. This is a great album. This came out in 1991, and even though I love the Years of Decay, clearly even more than this one because we haven't seen Years of Decay yet on this list, it was really cool to see Overkill kind of go back to their roots a bit more and pursue a more heads down, less epic kind of thrash attack. Although of course the title track of this is kind of a doomy sludger in the general vein of Skullcrusher off of Years of Decay. But loads of great songs on this. Coma, Infectious, Blood Money, Thanks for Nothing, Bare Bones. I really like Bare Bones. I've always loved Live Young, Die Free. That's a really strong thrasher on this album. And one of the greatest songs is Nice Day for a Funeral, of course, which is kind of it's a pretty unique Overkill song. Really good stuff. I mean, this is an absolute colossus of a record. So what is even better than this, I hear you ask? Well, I'll tell you my opinion. Album number 3 is The Years of Decay. Now, as I said in my unboxing video for this Atlantic box set, I reviewed this for Kerrang when it came out back in 1989, that's right, and I gave it 5Ks, and I would still give it 5Ks today. In fact, I've just reviewed it for a major rock magazine, these reissues, and I've given it the same score. Now, this is Overkill's answer to Metallica's Master of Puppets. It's Overkill's epic album. It's when they pushed the epic songs about as far as they could go before they pulled back again and went back to basics with Horrorscope. But this is a whole load of great songs on here. Time to Kill, Elimination, I Hate. I'm not sure about I Hate so much. I've always really liked it. It kind of sounds a bit like a punk cover. It's like Overkill invented their own punk song instead of covering one. You know, you got Skullcrusher on here though, and then you got Birth of Tension, which I always think is one of the more overlooked Overkill songs. Love the riff on that, such a good song. And then you've got a couple of epics in Who Tends the Fire and The Years of Decay, both really good. It's nice that they're not actually ballads, they're just kind of epic, slow or mid-paced songs, but still really heavy. And then you go out on this absolute heads down banger, Evil Never Dies, which is really the 4th part of the Overkill song saga. Yeah, so I think while we might agree or disagree on the exact placement of the Years of Decay on this list, I think most people would hopefully see this as a top 3 album. It's time for number 2, and of course the identity of number 2 will determine what number 1 happens to be, so this will be a bit of a giveaway, but nevertheless, here we go. It's Feel the Fire, and I'm sure that, again, for many of you, Feel the Fire is going to be your favourite Overkill album, and I can totally understand why. This was actually, I think, the second Overkill album I heard, because I heard Taking Over first. I got Taking Over first, and then I bought this second hand in a record shop. In fact, you can still see the record shop stamp in there. That's one of the joys of vinyl. You don't get a record shop stamp in a digital download, do you? But what a great album this is. I mean, to be honest with you, some of the tracks on there are reasonably mediocre, but there's such an amazing feel to this album. This, by the way, is the original Noise Records pressing of the album with the bonus track Sonic Reducer. And I only noticed recently, I posted this on my Instagram, it's got the bonus track Sonic Reducer there, but you can see that not only is Sonic Reducer written in a different colour, slightly different shade, it's also slightly to the right of the other track, so it really was added on to the original artwork there, that song. There are 3 songs on this record, I think, that are just amazing, and they justify the number 2 spot for this album almost by themselves. And those tracks are, of course, Rotten to the Core, the title track, Feel the Fire, and the closing track, Overkill, which launched a series of 5 songs, all called Overkill, basically about a kind of Jason Voorhees satanic slayer, as far as I can tell from the pseudo-mystical lyrics, which I love, by the way. And of course there's loads of other great stuff on here as well. There's Hammerhead and Blood and Iron, and There's No Tomorrow. I mean, not many bands get things as right as Overkill did on this record, and the songs are just really atmospheric, aren't they? Especially the title track, Feel the Fire. It's really evocative. What an album. Before we move on to number 1, it's worth noting that sometimes the albums you experience first from a band become your favourite. It's kind of like the imprinting theory, you know, baby birds hatch and then they latch on to the first bird they see. When it comes to Feel the Fire and the number 1 album, there's a bit of that going on. No surprise then that Taking Over is number 1 on this list. Oh, I've always loved this album. I mean, look at this cover. This cover is just crazy. I mean, the cover itself guaranteed that the album was going to be amazing, but it's just a whole absolute glut of Overkill classics on here, starting with Deny the Cross, Wrecking Crew, Fear His Name. Use Your Head actually might be the first Overkill song I ever heard, thanks to Tommy Vance on his Friday Rock Show Radio 1 show. It was either that or Electro Violence. I know Tommy played both, but I can't remember which one I heard first. Yeah, so you've got Electro Violence on side B. How can this album not be #1 when it's got Electro Violence, Power Surge, In Union We Stand, Overkill 2. There's just something really filthy and unbridled and kind of young about this album in a really good way, and it's the kind of era of a band that can never really be truly recaptured. I think this is just a truly special album. And by the way, when I made my unboxing video, quite a few people asked me if these albums in this box set, which have all been half speed mastered, actually sound any better. Now, I've been away, but I have managed to listen to this, and to my ears it does sound better than the OG vinyl. It sounds quite a bit clearer, because the original vinyl had a little bit of a sunken, sort of muddy-ish kind of sound, and so this actually improves upon the source material, in my opinion. If you've managed to hear the whole vinyl box set and you've got your own opinions on this, please get down in comments, because to be honest, I'm not a great audiophile. Anyway, yes, #1. Look at the magic of this. Right, get down in comments and tell me what your own ranking of these first 7 Overkill albums would be. Also have a look at the other videos on screen now and see if there's anything you might want to carry on watching. Until the next time then, thank you and metal.